Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing right now. Hello world, I'm Chris Pirillo, and this is the Locker Gnome Daily Report, or TLDR for short, your daily dose of geek news, gadget views, and answers that you can use. And today, I want to give you my review, my experiences with the HTC One. Many of you saw me unbox this live here in this very YouTube channel. Thank you for watching that, and hopefully you appreciated the effort. Hopefully you appreciate this effort as well. Been using this device prolifically enough to need to recharge it a few times. I mean, newsflash, when you use products, batteries drain. So it's been a joy to try and to share these experiences with you if you're not familiar with the way I do reviews. It's less about covering the empirical data. You could look up spec sheets elsewhere if you haven't already. I just want to share with you my experiences. Not just experiences with the HTC One, but specifically in relation to my experiences with other leading Android devices. Like to this point, the Samsung Galaxy S3. I'll be getting a hold of the Samsung Galaxy S4 soon, as well as my favorite Android device of all time, the Nexus 4 directly from Google, or LG, the manufacturer. So the HTC One. TLDR version, great hardware, questionable software, mediocre experience in general. To dive in deeper, if you want to see any of the samples that I recorded, let's say video samples, photo samples, comparisons, you want to look at my Google Plus feed because that's where I published them. You can circle me there. I'm Chris Pirillo. I don't know if I'm the only one there, but the one with 1.x million followers over there. Didn't flood that data into this channel, but you could see exactly where I arrived at my conclusions by looking at the samples directly. Initial impressions of the hardware were fantastic. Even the initial impressions of the software were fantastic. But the more I used it, the more frustration crept in. The more it was kind of obvious that the HTC One suffers from a lot of what Android devices suffer from, and that's too many chefs in the kitchen. In terms of weight, really, really lightweight. I love the profile of this thing. As far as a design of a smartphone goes, it probably is up there, at least top three. Very, very slim, very sturdy, does not feel cheap at all. If there were issues I had with the hardware specifically, not the location of the buttons, it's the fact that the buttons were flush against the frame, which were, frustrating, not just to find, but to press without having to manage or look or do something else with it. I also felt like I had to grip it tighter than I would want to grip it because I was afraid it was going to slip, because it will slip in your hand easily if you're not holding onto it. There's not much grip to the perimeter. But, if you want something that looks good, it's going to be very difficult to top the HTC One in the range of Android devices today. Feels good, good weight, I would say a solid frame for any type of smartphone out there by today's standards. The sleek options, the responsiveness of the screen. How do I say this? Very responsive in places, but not everywhere. In fact, it is obvious that classic Android jank exists in the HTC One, and I don't want to go into this debate. Some people see it, some people don't. Suffice it to say, some apps have not yet been optimized, or even the platform hasn't been optimized, and unfortunately, HTC's Sense layer on top of the Android experience only exacerbates the problem. There's still a lot more optimization that needs to be done. But generally speaking, the responsiveness wasn't horrible, wasn't the worst I've seen, but definitely not the best I've seen either. Color representation on images and videos, about as good as it could possibly get on a screen like this. The text was crisp. In fact, when I was, reading, text, I'm going through them, like it's a very crisp screen, and then I would jump over to the Nexus 4 and go, oh, my Nexus 4 looks kind of muddy. So that tells me that this is a very sharp screen and that the Nexus 4 isn't as sharp. So if you do a lot of reading on your smartphone, you may be very happy to hear that. Or even video viewing. Audio quality, which is, in line with video viewing, I thought was just as excellent as it could possibly be. And that's possibly because of the positioning of the speakers. I don't know if you noticed this, but the speakers are right up front, and that's exactly how you use your phone. You're facing the screen, and you're going to be listening to things, and the speakers are directed towards your ears. Perfect positioning of the speakers. Plus, the integration of Beats audio. You can see the little logo there on the back. I think HTC did their homework. This is a device that sounds great, not just because of the engineering of the sound quality, but also in conjunction with the positioning of the speakers. Excellent for a smartphone. Excellent, 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 excellent. As far as the camera goes, the camera quality, some people have been raving about it. I wouldn't say it's great. It's better than some. As far as a camera goes, I think it's probably above average, but I really wasn't blown away by it. Even in low light and messing with low light settings and toggling that feature in the camera, it would produce okay images, not terribly noisy, sharp, but not like amazing. And maybe I just haven't seen enough smartphones. Not like I don't have enough of them. We got this one, this one, this one, this one, other ones over there, including other HTC phones like the Windows Phone 8X, which is my go-to Windows Phone device at this point in time. So for camera, if the one that you have is horrible, you're going to like this. Maybe the one you have right now is great. You may be taking a step sideways. It all depends on what you're moving from to. Take a look at the sample images I uploaded. Take a look at the sample images other people have uploaded. I would say the same thing for any particular phone, because what I find to be good may not be different, or may be different, or may not be different from what you find to be good. As far as the battery goes, yes, I had to recharge it a few times, and I believe that the battery life overwhelmingly seemed to fall in line with the battery life of my iPhone. My iPhone 5. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if you read statistics saying that their battery life is about the same. So it got me through a day of doing things, average things, watching videos, surfing the web, doing app things, playing games and whatnot, average things you might do with your smartphone. So the battery could last about a day or get you through a day without necessarily needing to recharge it. So I thought it was something to definitely think about when you're thinking about upgrading to a smartphone. Good battery life on the HTC One. As far as hardware and software parity is concerned, as I kind of prefaced, that's where HTC's got a lot of work to do. And I think they're just falling victim to a lot of the problems that Android phones fall victim to, and that is just this questionable experience. Not only are we dealing with HTC's layer over Android, but we're also, and I've got the Facebook Home, but even if I'm talking about the Sense UI in general, I just found that having HTC's layer in there and then the carrier's layer in there on top of Android, sometimes it felt like I was using 3 experiences in one phone. Frustrating. They've got a lot of work to do to bring things in parity with one another. Good piece of hardware, but unfortunately I feel the software really fell short. And as far as a phone goes, you're probably going to buy it to use it, and part of that use case is the software. HTC's got some nice features that could be replicated through other systems on different platforms, same platform, value add enough, but are those features enough to pull it through as a leading phone? Certainly leading for HTC, but I found that the quirkiness of implementation of the features was more than frustrating with the HTC One. App selection ample. Of course, you could connect to Google Play, download apps through there, the apps that you could run on this device, and that's a lot of them that are in the Google Play Store. The accessories ecosystem, as I did my research, seemed to be ample. This is going to be a leading device at least for the next year or so, so you're going to probably find the ability to get skins and cases specifically designed with the HTC One in mind. Cost to value proposition. If you get this phone subsidized, yes, it may be worth it. Absolutely. If you have to pay a full price, I think you're going to be frustrated. If I had to, and I'm very grateful HTC passed this along for me to review, I would be very frustrated with paying full price for this device. But it's only because I've had different experiences. And that's the thing. You may be having an experience on your current phone that's horrible. Upgrading to this may be a dream come true. But as it stands on its own, I just don't know if the hardware is in line with that software experience, which speaks so much to the value of smartphones these days. So just to cover the positives, because there's positives in everything, and trust me, the HTC One has a lot to talk about in terms of positives. Tons of features in the camera application. Great quality shots for what it is. The Zoe feature was also a bonus. It's this nice little feature that could likely be replicated in software elsewhere. You toggle this feature over here. Zoe's turned on, and if I press the record button or the camera button, what it'll do is it'll record a little video, but it actually started recording that before I pressed the record button. Kind of a a neat little feature, and I appreciated that as a value add. And then I can go back and go into that Zoe and pull out individual frames as snapshots at any point in time during that brief video recording. A zoetrope, you know, it's a beautiful thing. I appreciated that part of the camera. I also appreciated the default blink experience. You jump right in to the HTC Sense experience. You know, immediately you're faced with, you know, these status updates, or if you've connected your networks, or news that's relevant to you, and not having to install any apps right up front. You know, it pulls it all in for you, of course. As I pointed out, or if you didn't notice before, I've become a fan of the Facebook Home. Not to say it's any better or worse than what HTC's done with Blink Feed. It's just a different implementation. So for a first experience, for a first user, someone who's never used a smartphone before, I think they would appreciate that. I also thought it was neat that they implemented an IR, turn it the right way. Oh, I did turn it the right way, sorry. An IR emitter underneath, or I guess within the power button on top. Kind of a neat thing. I don't know if I would ever use it, but it was smart. Very, very smart engineering. I think HTC did a lot of homework in engineering the bulk of what went into the HTC One's design. Very clear, as I said, sharp text, rich, colorful images, great sound, near perfect positioning of all speakers, or the two speakers. Sturdy frame, does not feel cheap at all, feels lightweight in the hand. It warms up when in use, that's going to happen, but nothing out of the ordinary, and I think that is a positive. Nothing out of the ordinary. Good hardware. Good hardware, but unfortunately we do not buy devices just for the hardware alone. We got to look at specs and take them, you know, within context of the rest of the experience, and that's software. So I had a lot of not so great experiences with the HTC One, to put it lightly. The curved back, neat, you know, nice in the hand, but unfortunately it rocks. And when you're trying to type or use it on a flat surface, you're not going to like it. It's just an issue. I have my smartphones laying down in front of me all the time, and so when I was trying to type on one as it was trying to lay flat, it's never going to lay flat. It's just going to rock back and forth. Maybe an issue for you. The HDR video feature, nice idea, but not necessarily in implementation or practice. It's got a lot more work. In fact, HTC is said to be pushing a software update down the pike. That being said, never buy a device based on a promise. Buy a device for what it is, because that software update may never come. And I think many of you have been burned by that in the past. Oh, a software update's coming. It'll get this eventually. And does it? Anybody's guess. The Android jank that I've experienced on many Android devices, other than the only device I've not experienced it heavily on is the Nexus 4. So I know it's possible to eliminate Android jank. I know it's possible. HTC One hasn't done it. There's a lot of jank apparent. Some people see it, some people don't. Some people say it's the smoothest experience they've had on Android. That may be true. I can tell you this, it's not been the smoothest experience I've had on Android. And so I had to point that out. It wasn't apparent to me when I was first using it, and it's not that it's because things are running in the background or I have animated wallpapers or something's not turned off. Even if the system was idle, Android jank was apparent. I'm not going to dive into this. I'm not going to make a debate of whether or not it exists. It absolutely exists. Period. End of story. If you don't see it, great. This isn't an issue for you. For the people who see it, they're going to see it. It is absolutely here. Stuttery animations, jank in more than one application, not just Facebook, not just Google Chrome. In a lot of applications, it is apparent. So I don't care what hardware is inside. If the software has not been optimized, that's a big part of it. So HTC still has a lot of work to do in terms of fleshing that out. I thought that the buttons themselves, while I appreciate the design, I mean, in theory, like, this looks really nice because the buttons are flush with the rest of the case, but it was frustrating. Like, I kept accidentally hitting one when I was holding it, or hitting the other when I was trying to hit one. If I was going to hit the power, I'd accidentally hit the volume button, or was going to hit the volume button, I'd accidentally hit the power. Because unfortunately, they're not just difficult to press, difficult to find and position your hand in such a way that you can press them. Two-handed operation is easier, but if you're trying to use it with a single hand, it will be maddening. This is not despite it being about the size of a Nexus 4, and maybe not exactly the same. The Nexus 4 is a fantastically easier single-handed operation phone than the HTC One, specifically because those buttons are flush, and it was frustrating. In fact, I didn't even want to pick it up because the edge, some of the edges, while not sharp, are not exactly smooth either. It got annoying, really annoying. As far as looks nice, but in practice, got a little frustrating over and over and over again. There's no grip while you're holding it, so it could slide easily, potentially. Something to keep in mind. There's not a lot of grip on the sides, like, again, you might have on a product like the Nexus 4. I thought there was a klutzy implementation on certain customization or sense features. At times, I thought I was using, Android, and other times I thought I was using a completely foreign system when it was the same device. And you've got too many things, too many people wanting to do it their way on the same device, and it was just apparent. And I wish the carriers would understand, beat this through their thick skulls. I wish, the manufacturers would just get this through their thick skulls. We want a good experience, not, 3 versions of a dialogue wrapped up into the same system. And HTC's got a lot of cleaning up to do, because it would just different UI elements. I mean, it would be the same type of experience theoretically, but it would just look different. And it's only because HTC made modifications. I know the carrier made modifications, and of course, they're building it all on top of Android itself. The default keyboard was okay, not as good as third-party keyboards. This may not be an issue for you, because you may already be using a default, or I should say another keyboard, not just the default keyboard. The camera app does not remember most recent settings sometimes. That was maddening. When I would always toggle it to HDR and get out and do something else or go back, I'd jump back in and HDR would be turned off. I'm like, WTF? Really? You're not going to remember the last settings I had? Okie dokie. It was frustrating. So the camera app is a little buggy. Carrier apps were invasive and annoying. It almost goes without saying, but dude, this is a part of the device that you're getting. The carrier's going to layer their crap on top of the crap that HTC layered on. Some of it's good. I'm not saying it's all crap. I'm just saying it just tends to take away from an overarching experience, and I cannot stress that enough. HTC's name branding on the front ruins an otherwise elegant design. You can apparently hack it to be a button that you could push. I'm not going to do that, nor is the average consumer, which is who I really like doing my videos for. Why did they have to put the HTC logo up front? They've got a big one on the back. And let's see if I can angle it the right way there. Why up front? Otherwise, it's a good hardware design. HTC, you did so well in parts of this design, so well. Really, you stand out as far as Android phones go, amongst them, certainly. The video recording consistently yielded haphazard frame rates, which may be an issue if you record video with your smartphone. The camera, may have been better than the Nexus 4, but one of the things that you'll see in the samples, if you look at them on my Google Plus page, frame rate would stop, just drop, plummet. When I'd change lighting, go from dark to light or light to dark, and then it would blur, things were in slow motion. Yikes. No matter what resolution I recorded in, no matter which camera I used on the HTC One, it was still a problem. A lot of optimization that needs to be done. There were issues with purple flare that happens on images or videos if you've got a light source just off of where the lens is recording. It happens on smartphones. It happens on just quite a few digital cameras. Some have taken their lumps for having purple flare, but it is apparent, however large or small, in the HTC One. Duh. That's what I was explaining to you about a year ago when people were complaining about it on another smartphone. Software patches, again, may be coming, but they may not be coming. And that's something that makes me a bit nervous in terms of recommending this outright. So who is the HTC One for? If you love HTC, if you're upgrading from an older HTC device, I think you're going to love the HTC One because it'll absolutely be an improvement. No doubt about it. If you're someone who appreciates sturdy frames over everything, you don't want something that's cheap or looks cheap or feels cheap, I think you're going to like the HTC One. The shortcomings notwithstanding, because you may not see the same shortcomings. Like I said, really the only hardware shortcoming I could find was specifically that the buttons were flush and it was a little frustrating and awkward to use as a single hand. If you need phone speaker quality, you watch videos, you use a speaker for talking on the phone. These speakers, this whole speaker setup, the audio system with Beats or beyond, the actual hardware implementation of the speakers in relation to Beats, probably the best in the industry today. The positioning is not to be understated. I just love it. Just like the Nexus 10 tablet, the speakers up front make so much sense. Think about it. You're looking at the screen, you want the speakers pointed to your ears. Another good reason to get the HTC One over other devices. So who's the HTC One not for? Someone who wants a cohesive software experience. If experience matters, if software matters to you, not just the feature but the implementation, you will hate the HTC One. If you're someone who hasn't been happy with Android yet, for one reason or another, I think you will be disappointed with the HTC One. Certainly in relation to the Nexus 4, which I still have no problem recommending. The camera on here is not as good as the HTC One. The system itself doesn't have a sharp screen. Certainly not as sharp as the HTC One. But as an overarching experience, the Nexus 4 is still better because it's Android. That's it. You don't get any other layers. That's it. It's clean, it's fast, it's responsive. There's no jank to the Nexus 4. If it is, it's not as apparent. And I think that's a better overarching experience. You're looking for a better Android experience? Today, it's difficult to top the Nexus 4. And you know what, HTC? You can fix that. You have the power to fix that. The onus is on you to make a better experience for the user. It's not just the features, the implementation. Trust me on this. And if you don't see this as a problem, well, then you don't see it as a problem. You shouldn't be listening to the experiences that I'm sharing with you because I absolutely see it as a problem. If you're someone who's waiting for an iPhone killer, you're probably not going to be happy with the HTC One. It is not an iPhone killer. Sorry. Hate to burst everybody's bubble. Android's certainly getting there. If you're looking for a closer to iPhone killer, hardware, everyone's looking for something different, right? But I just cannot underscore the idea of ecosystem and a clean experience, and will tell you that HTC is got a few messes on their hands. And I'm not the only person to say that either. So you can't just point me as the enemy here. And this has nothing, I'm not slamming, or slighting HTC. I'm not slighting Android. I'm slighting the experience and everybody involved with that experience, because this is ultimately what we have to deal with, this device. So some people will love it, some people will not like it. That person may be you, may not be you. I just wanted to tell you that's been my experience with the HTC One. I plan on using it regularly. It will be a part of my array of devices. Certainly will be comparing it at some point in the near future to the Samsung Galaxy S4, even though this is not the S4, it's the S3. But I can tell you right away, between the two, it's going to be very difficult for anybody to choose between these two devices. The bottom line is that what it boils down to, you either want something that looks and feels cheap or something that was built sturdiness, built sturdy, built tough. And even not having the S4 in hand, I'm telling you, I think the HTC One is going to have it over every other part of the Samsung Galaxy S4. I could be wrong. I will reserve final judgment for when I actually get that hardware. Thank you again for watching the video as far as you have. I know I've kind of waxed pathetic. This is even the second time I recorded the video because I wanted to keep it shorter. Thanks for being a good part of our community and appreciating the things we do for you. We'll see you later.